So we're coming up to the conclusion, chapters 5 and 6. So we will hopefully see this as an inspiration, and certainly as I was rereading chapters 5 and 6, certainly the challenge that is before us. Chapter 5 is entitled The Lines of Approach and Action. The Holy Father has thus far outlined the challenges placed before us regarding our common home, and now he turns his attention to what needs to occur. The first thing is this, and it's the title given to this section of one of this chapter, the dialogue on the environment in the international community. And dialogue is always a challenge. All along, we've heard that a dialogue is needed. Here again, this is where the Holy Father's encyclical differs greatly in previous approaches of other encyclicals. They were normally seen as dictates from on high, whereas this encyclical is calling all of us together to be part of the solution, for we have all, to one degree or another, been part of the problem, knowingly or unknowingly. More and more we have grown to understand that what was true from the beginning of creation, that all human beings are made in the image and likeness of God. We remember learning that early on in catechism, right? We are made in the image and likeness of God. And thus far, we are called to share in this common home, planet Earth. Interdependence is a word and a reality that we must come to understand if we are to resolve the challenges placed before us. Interdependence, working together, obliges us to think of one world with a common plan. Unilateral actions and decisions cannot be the trend of the day, and so much they often are. All nations will have to come together respectfully to try to be in the shoes of each other. A global consensus, what we can live with, the attitude of winners and losers on this will not work. There will have to be concessions on the part of all. Some of the consensus issues would include planning sustainable and diversified agriculture. What naturally grows where? Boy, that'll be a challenge for California. We grow a lot of things that do not naturally grow here. And yet, if we didn't grow them, who would? We provide food for many. Okay? So it's not a simple thing. One of the other consensus things will be developing renewable and less polluting forms of energy and being attentive to how we use that energy. Encouraging more efficient use of energy, promoting better management of marine and forest resources, and ensuring universal access to drinking water. You've heard me say this before, and other professionals in government and science, etc. If there's going to be another war, it's going to be over the fluid of water, not oil. The replacement of coal and oil is indeed needed, but we must also consider the peoples employed by these industries. See, that's the other thing that I think the Holy Father is so clear about. What do you do with all the people that are employed by these industries? We have to think about this. Again, these have been a way of life for them and their very livelihood. The issue of who will pay for all these changes, yet another challenge for us to be citizens of the world. There will be great responsibilities that will have to be shouldered by all, and it will be according to the capability of those countries. If you go back to Scripture, to those who have been given much, much will be expected. Recognition that worldwide there have been significant advances, and the majority of this has been from individual groups, far too many for the Holy Father to even mention. But he realizes that there have been many, many grassroots groups that have been addressing these issues. World summits on the environment have fallen short due to the lack of political will. We've seen that. Again, we will encounter the fact that economics and the political worlds enter in and see to their interests alone, which then narrows any approach. The truth is that international agreements have not succeeded because individual countries have placed their national interests above those of the world community. That's going to be natural. Are we going to vote, are the people of the United States going to vote for an individual that is going to see the needs of the world rather than the needs of the United States? Okay? We expect the leaders to care for us first. Okay? And so it's going to be a challenge of mindset. And it's going to be a challenge to trust. Trust that God will provide. One of the things that we can do is involve ourselves in prayer regarding these efforts. And I don't think that we can downplay the role of prayer in any of it. Okay? Prayer is crucial. Okay? Just as an aside, it's crucial for all of us to understand that when we enter into intercessory prayer, that is prayer asking God for something, that we must be committed to being part of the process. Okay, for example, if I'm praying for the poor, I have to ask myself, what part am I doing to assist the poor? Okay? The passage from the scripture that states, to those who have been given more will be expected. That's Luke 12, verse 48. Seems to be truly the classic of this particular portion of section 170 of the Holy Father's encyclical. The Holy Father quotes the Bishops' Conference of Bolivia that said, the countries which have benefited from a high degree of industrialization at the cost of enormous emissions of greenhouse gases have a greater responsibility for providing a solution to the problem they have caused. Those are going to be hard words to hear. That's hard for me to hear. Is that hard for you to hear? Okay? Those are hard words. And yet, if we shy away from them, things will just get worse. The Holy Father calls for the solidarity of all peoples, given the needs of developing economies and countries, and the assistance they will need from those economies that are already advanced and stable. There will be those people that believe that all are called to equality in this. However, there is something to be said for the fact that all persons and countries will be called upon to do what they are capable of doing. And that in itself will be a challenge for the haves and the have-nots. This is not new for the human race. There is no question that at some point, and soon, there will have to be the development of enforceable international agreements. There is a need for respectful interaction of national sovereignties, but there must also be a mutually agreed upon means for averting regional disasters. The growing problem of marine waste and the protection of the oceans again will call for the regulation that will have to be upheld. Possibly a United Nations for such work, and exclusively for such work, might be needed. The Holy Father quotes Pope Benedict XVI and St. John the 23rd as both called for an overall and an all-encompassing international governance that hears the voice of all and works towards consensus. Consensus, again, is what can we all live with? Because if we don't come to a consensus, there'll be no life at all. Okay? And this is hard for us to grasp, okay? Because things seem to be okay right now. But if we listen to the scientists and we see how things have been ebbing away, okay, we will notice that there are major changes. Major changes. In part 2, the Holy Father calls for a dialogue for new national and local policies. He says it's essential that laws that will guide the common good be established, adhered to, and monitored. Okay, so those three aspects. They have to be established, then they have to be adhered to, and then someone has to be the police person. Someone has to be the monitor. This must involve not only, at a minimalist level, the avoidance of bad practices, but the promotion of best practices. As is common, the political agenda intervenes and has grave difficulties in making statements and moving in directions that people and economies will find troublesome and as a cause for sacrifice. Okay? Sacrifice is kind of a real unique thing to this time and place. Okay? Any of you here that are my age or older, we remember sacrifice. If we didn't have to do it, we certainly saw our parents and grandparents do it. We knew what sacrifice was. And we were all the better for it. Local individuals and groups can make a great impact. The Holy Father calls yet again for a cooperative, an agreement between neighboring communities to support the same environmental policies. It calls for citizens to control the political process, the national, regional, and municipal. I have some questions that I want you to reflect on. And I want you to look at them individually, and then I want you to turn to one of the persons near you and take a look at how you would respond and reflect on these questions. So, and of course, you're going to take more time to reflect on these than just right now. I want you to take it home and, again, bring it to prayer. What actions would you like to see your own government take on the international level to help curb greenhouse gases and preserve the environment? And then, along with that, an action. List the actions you can take on your local level or on a personal level to conserve energy and reduce consumption. We're revisiting that question because we started with that early on, okay? But what more can you do that you have not already done? Let's give it a couple minutes, and then if people have something that they would like to present, please feel free to do that, okay? Now, we don't have to address those in order. If you'd like to reflect on the first question, or if you would like to respond to the action, we can do either or, both and. Reflection, action.
When they had the Super Bowl in San Francisco, a large part of the city was no automobiles, like walking home. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a contrast before where they show a city block and they say on this street full of cars, there's 200 people in 177 vehicles, and it's all crowded and congested. And then they showed the same picture, they erased all the cars, and they just had people standing. Yeah. And it's a big open area, and there's plenty of room for everyone. And the idea was that potentially more and more time and space in the city could potentially be regulated so that automobiles are not part of our everyday in that area.
Okay, and one of the things that will come up is then what happens to the automobile industry? Okay, I'm just going to be,
or people have to go to work.
Yeah, or the oil industry. You know, we have to look at everything and say, if we're going to go in this direction, what are we going to do to help the other industries and the people that are supported by these things? It's like, we're just going to get rid of cars. Yeah, good luck with that one. Okay? A lot of people can't walk. Okay?
If you get rid of cars, what do you do with the people that build them?
Yes, exactly. What do you do with the people that work in the automobile industry? What do you do with the thousands and thousands of people that work in the oil industry? What is the plan? Okay? What is the plan? That's where we have to get our heads together with not only our own country, but with other nations and say, how are we going to do this? And what is the timeline? You can't do that overnight, okay? I can give you an example, okay? Look at Western Pennsylvania or West Virginia. The coal companies, once they raped the place, they left. And that left all of those people without livelihood. There was no plan, okay? So we can have these wonderful ideas, but we have to say, what's going to be the domino effect? And how are we going to help that domino effect so it doesn't crush people, okay? Okay, how about one of the actions? What's something that you have not done yet in your own life that you know that you could do but haven't done yet? I'm notorious for using paper towels when I cook. Notorious. Okay? I just grab them and, clean because I'm running around and trying to get everything done. But again, does that go to the fact that, remember when the Holy Father talked about that word that he coined? Was it rapidity or what was it? It was in the first chapter. Moving too quickly. We are constantly moving. Rapidification, okay? That's one of the things that is common to us, I think, okay? We got to move. We got to move. And we pack our days. We jam-pack our days. And then at the end of the day, you're like, did I really have a joyful day today?
Well, you can use less paper towels or get
Really?
the size that are half.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things that we can do, okay? We have to be more conscientious about, and I bring this up because there is a retired priest now, and he now has his own home. And he says, I was never cognizant of turning out lights and turning down the heat or turning down the air conditioning. Why? Because he didn't have to pay for it. Okay? Well, it's true. It's true. Now, the way I was raised, I was in a military family, and my father was always, you're not in here, why is the light on? Those kinds of things. So I just want you to keep in mind, go through your day, think of what else you might be able to do. You might be able to improve upon or initiate. Okay? Okay. Consistency and longevity is crucial for the success of anything. We know that. What would happen, and this is not from the encyclical, but this is from me, okay? What would happen if there were 4 to 5 successive administrations, no matter what the party, that would remain dedicated to education? That is 20 to 25 years dedicated to truly seeing to it that all resources were made available. Teachers, materials, technology, support for students, and parents. Okay? What if? My speculation is that many of our social problems would reduce, and possibly the number of people in prison would lessen. Just my dream. I'd just like to see one generation be able to get the education that they need, to see if it would really make a change. The Holy Father, in section 3 of this chapter, it's entitled Dialogue and Transparency in Decision-Making. In times past, the environmental impact on some project was an afterthought, And as time has gone on, we have seen difficulties that have ensued. The Holy Father, along with those concerned for our common home, have stated that environmental impact must be on the drawing board from the very beginning of a conceived project. It's got to be right up there. The environmental impact would include many things, including the project's impact on people's physical and mental health, the local economy, and on public safety. The local population must have a special place at the planning table. Must. We need to move away from an intervention attitude so that intervention is not a need because of proper planning that would include all aspects before beginning a project. Follow-up activities and continued monitoring must be part of the process as well. Ethics is an essential for the legality is often out of touch with an ethic. When I was taking school law, I had Sister Mary Angela Shaughnessy, okay? And she's from Kentucky, so she had a southern drawl. And she said to us, ladies and gentlemen, she says, that which is legal and that which is ethical could get married tomorrow because they're not related. There's a lot of truth to that. In section 185, the Holy Father speaks of the fact that various questions must be part of the discussion and the process with new proposals. Discernment will be an operative word here, for the questions must look at whether a particular project will contribute to genuine integral development. Now, discernment, that should not be surprising that the Holy Father brings up discernment. Discernment is a huge part of the formation of a member of the Society of Jesus, and he's a Jesuit, okay? Now, he proposes these questions. What will it accomplish? Why is it needed? Where and when will it proceed? How will it progress? Who is it for? What are the risks? What are the costs? Who will pay those costs and how? In this discernment, there will be a priority to some questions over others. For example, he mentions the scarcity of water would be at the tip top. So if there is some project that is going to come up, what's going to be the water usage? Okay? Ultimately, we must move away from the top priority being profit as the sole criterion. Okay? And that is often the way we've moved. The Holy Father states again that the Church does not presume to have all the answers, but his plea is to business, industry, science, and all kinds of disciplines, that they be in dialogue and truly try to be in one another's shoes and to look at all dimensions and possible impacts. Any of you ever served on committees? Things don't move through committee very quickly, okay? And again, that is because we want things to move rapidly. And yet, when there are all kinds of diverse voices in the committee, the outcome is usually much better than if it was just my brainchild, okay? That's where our egos get in the road. And you've heard my EGO, the acronym. EGO is an acronym for edging God out. Okay? I use it all the time, mostly to myself. Okay? In the fourth section, it's entitled Politics and Economy in Dialogue for Human Fulfillment. In this section, there is a call for an urgent discussion for a dialogue within the political and economic communities. No group can be given absolute power, as this will only cause greater crises. Okay? Ethics must be part of the equation. Again, from the get-go and not as an afterthought. More profit does not and cannot solve the problems. Often when ethical questions are raised, it is seen as those who wish to stand in the way of progress. That's often what is said. We want to stand in the way of progress. There can be a balance. It has to be an approach where everyone wins, just not investors. The challenge is that there will need to be adjustments and change, none of which the human person is really wanting to do. We must accept decreased growth in certain places in order to allow expanded growth in others. The call here is to those who lead in production decisions to be attentive to consider new ways that will include and place great value on human existence and the natural environment. The Holy Father is calling for a new movement and set of eyes to look at a new economy. Okay? Politics is crucial in the process of governing economics. But as we have seen, politics can be corrupted by greed. We've seen it all the time. Okay? There are news reports all the time where good human beings are trying to help some poor brother or sister in another country. The money goes, or the goods go, and they're stolen by the government. And the people that need them never get them. The checks and the balances must be many, and the rub is this, that things will take longer. And again, I go back to that concept. We are intolerant beings in this age of, I want it, and I want it now. In section 5, the Holy Father speaks of religions in dialogue with science. We are called to live our faith in such a way that people are drawn to how we live and the wisdom that is part of our religious tradition. We must embrace justice and peace, a simpler way of living and sustaining the environment. For it is true that people will be far more attentive to our actions than our words. We must correct ourselves first. If we're going to go out there and ask this of everyone else, we must be the models. The Holy Father is calling for an ecumenical dialogue for this reason. I want you to think about this question. From your perspective, why do you believe government officials and politicians are unable to take decisive action in some nations to agree on steps to curb environmental destruction? What do you think? Why can't we get anywhere? And this is a wonderful time to talk about it, especially as we're getting ready for our own elections. My goodness. They're being paid off. Again, we'll go back to that concept of greed. Greed will destroy so many things. Okay? Yes, one of the capital sins. Okay?
And people don't want to believe it about global warming.
People don't want to believe
Global warming and other things.
global warming, but why don't they want to believe it?
Because it upsets their apple cart.
It upsets their apple cart. They may be saying, okay, if there is this global warming, I may have to change some things about the way I live. Okay? And I'm going to go back to the fact that, this is an altruistic move on the part of the Holy Father. He's what, 78? He may live another 10 years, but our world's going to be okay for another 10 years. Maybe, okay? But the point is, he's thinking about future generations. And let's face it, he didn't have any children, okay? He doesn't have any children. He may have nieces and nephews. I don't know. I don't know enough about him. But the point is, he's being altruistic and saying, this is what we have to do for the future. We inherited what we inherited. Are we going to be able to give even that to the people that come after us? He asks also what role religion can play in the movement for environmental preservation and restoration. Okay? And we are challenged by that. We are constantly challenged by that. In the section 6, it's entitled Ecological Education and Spirituality. He says we're moved and we're called to move beyond what has become, at least in the first world, what is compulsive consumerism. Compulsive consumerism. And it's something that we learn, or it's something that we take up. I remember teaching a young lady many years ago, and she told me she had 104 pairs of shoes. She loved that fact, okay? And this was not Imelda Marcos, okay? And she thought that was the coolest thing on the face of the earth. And you know what? For a kid, what were you going to say? But if we are, as adults, going in that, direction, we're in trouble. Ever see that, I think it was a bumper sticker. Whoever has the most toys when he dies wins. You ever see that? Yeah. It was a popular bumper sticker.
I'm reading a book written by David Brooks called The Road to Character. And he was addressing this issue of consumerism. And he put it in this way. He indicated that the 40s and 50s where people were sacrificing more because they had just got over, the economy was just coming up. And those very people then, when they had children, when the Industrial Revolution was coming and the jobs were plentiful and the money was there, then they wanted their children to have a lot more than what they had. And so he believed that started planting the seed for his writing and saying this, so that the children raised in that environment had more, and it became a thing that was just gone.
And then it's perpetuated. Yeah. I'm certain that is true for the way I was raised, okay? I know that there were some sacrifices, but I know that my mother and father wanted me to have more than they had. There was no question about that, okay? But for whatever reason, there was a balance, okay? And we learn about that balance, hopefully within the Catholic tradition, about how important it is. The Holy Father asks the question, or makes the statement, that do we feel free because we have the freedom to consume as much as we wish? He makes that statement, or it's a question to each of us. Do we feel free because we have the freedom to consume as much as we wish? The age-old Christian perspective and practice pricks our consciousness yet again. It is in giving that we ultimately receive. Section 2 of this particular part of the document speaks to the hope of educating for a covenant between humanity and the environment. I think for some people, it's hard to break the habit of shopping. Okay? It can be a habit, much like smoking or drinking. Okay? They get this high from it, and then it goes away, and then they have to go out and shop again. Okay? I used to really like shopping, okay? Now, not so much, not even online, okay? As I've heard many persons as they mature in age say, and you probably heard this too, and maybe even say it, my needs are few and my wants are even fewer. Okay? Environmental education that is occurring today is crucial to the formation of younger generations so that they may not get caught in a consumer mentality. Okay? Like anything else, small movements on the part of many can make a huge impact. The church plays a role in all of this. As a church, we are called to teach and place emphasis on seeing beauty. And as such, if we see the beauty, we will be prone not to do anything harmful to that beauty or exploit that beauty. I think that represents very clearly the fact that the Holy Father took the name Francis. To see beauty, to protect beauty, to not allow anything happen to God's beauty. That brings us back to seeing all things as an image of God and God's goodness. We are the ultimate image and likeness of God, okay? But the rest of creation is made by God, so there's an element of godliness in those elements. Ecological conversion is also something that the Holy Father speaks of. He says an ecology grounded in spirituality is called for. Okay? Not ecology for ecology's sake, but ecology as a spirituality. The spirit within us must be drawn to the spirit within others. The Native American approach, and actually many of the religions who lived upon the land and were cognizant of their connect with the land. Healthy relationships with nature. There is a holiness there. Individually and also collectively, such as conversion calls for trust. Trust that there will be enough for everyone. And an awareness that God will always provide. It is human greed that interrupts and steals from others. The Holy Father turns his attention to joy and peace. We are called to a spirituality where less is more. He says we do not need a flood of new possessions to satisfy us because they will soon be replaced by wanting something else, and then something else, and then something else. Living in moderation is key. Look at the origin of religious orders. They place their emphasis on relationship with God and with one another. With time in shared meals and shared work and recreation, being together. That is what was most crucial for them. And you see when things got out of line, like the Carmelites got out of line, Teresa of Avila came along and said, no, I was one of those. We have lost it. We have lost what we're supposed to be about. And of course, when she tried to reform the Carmelites, they locked her in a closet, you know. Yeah. Okay. John of the Cross, the same thing. Okay. They were saying, this is who we're supposed to be. Let's go back and get in touch with that. So we've needed these men and women who've been prophets and prophetesses throughout the ages to call us to simplicity. It's crucial for us to see a direct connection with an environment that is out of balance. And the Holy Father says it's because there's a lack of balance in the human heart. There's a lack of balance in the environment because there's a lack of balance in our own hearts. This is a challenge that is placed before us. We must seek a peace within us to work for peace among us. So the Holy Father is calling every one of us to do soul searching and say, what change am I going to make? What am I going to do? You know what? And that's the most important thing. What am I going to do? Not what is someone else going to do, but what am I going to do? Our hearts are being called by the Lord to be open in a new and different way. Maybe, just maybe, it is this climate crisis that is occurring for us to come to the realization of a greater crisis or challenge. The age-old mandate from God to love. Love in every and all ways, and love can never be exhausted. Unlike food and water, love is, as stated in the Song of Songs, stronger than death. It cannot be quelled or extinguished, nor can it be used up. Pope Francis makes the argument that the human community must bring itself into balance in order to preserve and restore the environment. What does he mean by that? And what challenges do you think we're called to? This is not new, okay? Many of the things that the Holy Father raises now in a different type of language is not new. They've come out of the Scriptures for eons. Previous popes, bishops, laymen, laywomen have said the same thing time and again. What are we going to do interiorly? Okay? What conversion do we need to make in our own lives? We must be convinced that we need one another. In the spirit of Saint Therese of Lisieux, we are called to let our daily habits be kind, peaceful, and self-giving. Sacramental signs. Renewed emphasis is an ancient tradition of seeing everything as a sign of God's love. Okay? This is a sacramental theology, to see all of nature and all loving actions among human beings as a revelation and sign of God's love in the midst of us. The Eucharist. The theology here is that through this action, heaven and earth are most closely linked. Here's a good reminder for us. Sunday is a day of rest. To renew ourselves, and yet, how do we use Sundays? What's that?
Driving on Sunday? People are going to the malls, they're going to...
People are out doing all kinds of stuff. Did you remember that concept of you're not supposed to do servile work? Okay, you can do some work, but servile work. Like I do laundry. That's servile work. I mean, it's not that servile because in the old days, it was servile work, But now I put it in a machine, take it out of the machine, put it in the other machine, okay? And I use Sundays now to start to pack because I'll be moving. So I'm doing a little bit of that. Because when I get home on the weeknights, I'm too tired. I say, I'm going to pack that, that shelf of books tonight. I say, well, maybe I'll wait. Okay? But that whole concept, and there was a reason. There was a time where people did work 7 days a week. They did. And more than 15 hours. And so this concept of a Sunday to give everyone a break was a fabulous thought. Okay? Keep holy the Lord's day. Your body needs the rest and your spirit needs the reminder. The Holy Father concludes with that which is the basis of all theological doctrines. The basis of all theological doctrines is the doctrine of the Trinity, the love that exists among the three persons. This love relationship is the one we are called to reflect in our lives, a oneness. And it's not surprising that the Holy Father mentions in the conclusion of his document, Mary is Queen of all creation. Mary has always had a key role in Roman Catholic Christian theology. Okay? We know that she is not a goddess, but we do know that she is referred to in the Vatican documents as the first Christian, the perfect Christian, the one who always responded lovingly, okay, without holding back. And he also mentions St. Joseph. You notice that the Holy Father is called for us during the Eucharistic prayer to make sure that we include St. Joseph now. Have you noticed that? Father, are you doing that? Are you including St. Joseph? Usually. I wrote it in so that I wouldn't forget. But he made that mandate within like 4 months of being the Holy Father, right after our Blessed Mother, St. Joseph, her spouse. Okay? Because he is the patron of the universal church, the one who watches over and watched over Jesus as he was growing up. All symbols of care and regard. And when you hear the Holy Father speak of, the canticle of the Son throughout all kinds of things, we know that he is focused clearly on seeing the Lord God in everything. Hence the name he took, Francis. And I hope you've noticed that no one else has ever taken that name. And Francis died in the late 1200s. So we're up to the year 2000 and beyond, and no one has ever taken that name because it's a challenging name to take. Okay? Do you have any thoughts or reflections? Because this is our final session on Laudato Si. Do you have any thoughts, things that maybe you liked about it, things that you found more challenging, etc.? Anything? Is there anything that really came up that we haven't talked about? Yeah.
I was struggling trying to connect the encyclical to parables, and the parable that stood out the most was the parable of the talents. And I'm always a little bit concerned would you say if the common care of our earth is the 5 talents?
What you're going to do with it?
What we're going to do with it, and would you say
I think that's very much one of the mandates that Jesus gives implicitly and explicitly in that parable. I have given you this, now what are you going to do with it? Okay? I think that comes out very clearly, okay? Also, I think also the parable of the seed and the sower. The hard ground, the soft ground, the weed ground, the rocky ground, the fertile ground. And you know what? We're all of them at one time or another. I don't know about you, but I have been, hard ground. I've also let the worries of the world choke out some things, okay? And then there are times where we're really fertile ground, and that's fabulous. That's a wonderful opportunity, okay? All right, so any other? All right, well then thank you very much. There is nothing in May. In June, I'm going to offer an opportunity for you to learn your spiritual pathway. There are 4 ways of praying: Augustinian, Franciscan, Thomistic, and Ignatian. And I actually will have a tool for you to take to identify what you might be, and then how to do meditation in Scripture based on what your strongest attribute is towards spirituality and praying. Okay? Thank you.